A U.S. delegation led by Vice President J.D. Vance heading to Pakistan tomorrow for talks with Iran. Iran's ambassador to Pakistan says the team is wheels up to Islamabad ahead of that meeting representing Iran in the talks. Now, live now to somebody whose family lives in Iran, lives the tension moment to moment, minute by minute in some cases. Alex Shams is editor-in-chief of AJAM Media Collection. So what are you hearing from your family when you talk to them?
I think people in Iran right now are really breathing a sigh of relief. They've been under the bombs for the last 40 days. People were really worried about survival. Thousands of people were killed, tens of thousands of people were homeless. And so right now, when I've been able to talk to family and friends in Iran, they've just really been talking about how for the first day in 40 days, they're not afraid of being killed by bombs. And I think that in itself feels like a victory right now, just being able to relax for a moment. At the same time, I think that optimism is also very cautious right now. There's a fear that at any moment the ceasefire could be broken. People are looking at what's happening in Lebanon as well, and that's making them really afraid because the mediation agreement from the beginning included Lebanon, and the fact that the United States and Israel have not respected that, I think, makes people worried that at any moment the United States could break this agreement. It could attack again during negotiations. I think it's important to remember that this war was a surprise attack. 40 days ago, Iran and the United States were actually at the negotiating table. And the fact that Israel and the U.S. launched this attack while engaged in diplomatic negotiations kind of gives Iranians a lot of pause and fear about whether they can really trust the United States and Iran at this moment. At the same time, I think there are many Iranians who are believing the government's narrative, which is that Iran has essentially won this war. It withstood the combined military force of two of the world's greatest military powers, and it appears to have come out ahead in the sense that it controls the Strait of Hormuz, which is something it never controlled before. And in that sense, there are some people who I think are celebrating that victory, this idea that they really did just withstand, an unimagined war that they never wanted and were trying to avoid. But at the same time, there's a sense as well among critics of the government that the government is now far more emboldened than it was before. It came into this war with a sense of massive crisis, having just killed thousands of people in street demonstrations. And now there's a sense in Iran that actually the government is in a much stronger position than it was before because for the first time in its history, it's essentially defeated the United States. And I think it's hard to say whether that's true or not, but what we do know is that Trump's rationale for entering this war has constantly shifted. He hasn't achieved any of its goals. The Iranian government is still very much in place. And by the last few days, it was very hard for Iranians to understand what exactly Trump and Netanyahu wanted. I think when they heard Trump say things like, we're going to send Iran back to the Stone Age, we're going to destroy its infrastructure, we're going to destroy their civilization, they were really hearing genocidal intent. And the United States was really essentially making clear that its goal was to obliterate a country of 90 million people. Right. I think anyone on the ground who might have thought this war could bring freedom at the beginning was really kind of dissuaded by those kinds of comments and really began to realize that there was no way out of this except some kind of lasting agreement.
And yet from the outset, of course, a lot of Americans who have watched this play out would say, look, we saw thousands of people rallying against the Iranian regime, calling for regime change. Many people, not only on Iranian soil, those who felt bold enough to talk, but also those here on American soil said they would welcome the help of Israel. They would welcome the help of the United States to get that regime change. Are you saying that the people you're talking to on the ground there in Iran are signaling a little bit of a change in heart from what we saw from those protesters not many weeks ago?
I think it's important to distinguish what protesters on the ground were saying, which is that they wanted democratic change, they wanted a different direction in the country, and they wanted a change in how the political system was structured. From some of the voices we heard coming out of that were happening outside of the country, in which there was this kind of belief that if Trump and Netanyahu are offering democracy, if they're saying that they could bring democracy, then people would be willing to accept that help. And I think that was always one perspective of many. Iranians are not a monolith. They have many different perspectives. And I've talked to activists both who supported the idea that war could help them and many more activists who believe that war was not going to help. Their experience was grounded in past wars, the fact that bombs have not brought democracy across the Middle East. I think if bombs did bring democracy, the Middle East would be the most democratic region on earth. But we've seen the U.S. invade Iraq, we've seen it attack Afghanistan, and we've also seen those wars lead to massive conflict. And in the case of Afghanistan, the United States took out the Taliban Taliban and then return the Taliban to power. And so I think those sentiments we heard back in January often came from a place of desperation, but at the same time, they were not necessarily dominant perspectives within Iran. And I think the people who held those perspectives now really have realized that the same country that is, threatening to destroy Iran, that is supporting Israel as it commits what many legal experts consider a genocide in Gaza and kind of an invasion of Lebanon right now, is not going to bring democracy or freedom to Iran. And I think, especially as an Iranian American, I've seen Trump's total disregard for the democratic system in the United States. And so one thing I always caution Iranians is that all we need to see in order to understand whether Trump wants to bring democracy to Iran is to see how he treats democracy in the United States. And I think in that sense, this conflict has really made clear that democratic change in Iran can only come from inside the country. It can't come from bombs from other countries, and that Iranians themselves are the only people who can really create a more independent and free future for their country.
And essentially, we've heard the president say that very thing, signaling to the Iranian people now is the time to take the power, if you at all possibly can. Interesting perspective. Thank you so much, Alex Shams. We appreciate you being on CBS News 24/7.